The maitre d' blocked the soaked stranger with one white-gloved hand. Water darkened Adrian's old wool coat and pooled beneath his worn shoes on the black marble floor. Beyond him, crystal chandeliers burned over Chicago's wealthiest donors, while a string quartet played beneath the soft clink of champagne glasses. The room smelled of truffle butter, polished wood, and money. Adrian reached into his pocket. 3 quarters, 2 dimes, a folded dollar bill softened by rain. The coins clicked against his palm, drawing a laugh from a nearby table. "The shelter is 6 blocks south," a man in a velvet tuxedo said. His companions smiled into their champagne. Another guest lifted her phone, angling the camera toward Adrian's frayed cuff. "Maybe he's tonight's entertainment." Laughter traveled across the gala in small, elegant waves. Adrian said nothing. His gaze moved from face to face, quiet and exact, as though he were memorizing each one. "You need to leave," the maitre d' said. "This is a private event. The sign outside says the dining room is open." Adrian's voice was low, controlled. "Not to you." Near the service station, Clara stopped polishing a wineglass. The linen cloth tightened between her fingers. She had been on her feet for 9 hours, and the soles of her black shoes felt hot against the floor. Inside her apron rested an envelope marked staff gala bonus, the money she needed to keep her electricity on and buy groceries until payday. Her manager, Leonard, crossed the room, his silver tie flashing beneath the chandeliers. "Remove him before the donors complain." Adrian closed his hand around the coins. A drop of rain slid from his hair to his jaw. "I can pay for soup." "Not here, you can't," Leonard replied. More laughter. Softer now, crueler. Clara set down the glass. The bass struck the tray with a clean, bright note that cut through the quartet. Leonard turned. "Clara, stay out of this." She looked at the empty two-top in her section, then at the envelope beneath her apron. Leonard followed her glance. "Seat him and you can forget your bonus." The kitchen doors swung open behind her, releasing a breath of heat and the smell of roasted garlic. Clara untied the envelope from her apron. For 1 second, she weighed it in her hand. Then she placed it on Leonard's silver tray. "Table 12 is mine," she said. "And it's empty." Leonard's jaw stiffened. "Think carefully." "I just did." Clara walked past him. The gala quieted one table at a time as she pulled out the chair opposite her service station. Its wooden legs scraped across the marble. Adrian watched her, his expression unreadable. She met his eyes without staring at his wet coat, his ruined shoes, or the few coins still trapped in his fist. "Sir," she said, laying a clean napkin across the table. "You may sit here." No pity softened her voice. No embarrassment lowered it. Only certainty. Adrian approached while dozens of faces tracked every step. When he sat, Clara turned his water glass upright and filled it from a chilled silver pitcher. "What can I bring you? What can this buy?" He opened his palm. Clara glanced at the coins. "A bowl of soup." Leonard leaned close enough for her to smell the sharp mint on his breath. "When he causes trouble, it comes out of your paycheck." Clara placed a menu before Adrian anyway. Across the room, the man in the velvet tuxedo rose with a full glass of red wine and started toward their table. Adrian noticed him first, then Clara did, but neither of them looked away. Red wine trembled against the rim of a crystal glass as the man in the velvet tuxedo stopped beside the table. The string quartet played beneath amber chandeliers, but nearby conversations thinned into expectant silence. Clara set down the steaming bowl of soup. Adrian had not touched his coins. "Careful," the man said, tilting his glass. The wine spilled across Adrian's shoulder, soaking the old wool coat in a dark crimson sheet. Cold drops struck the white tablecloth. Laughter broke around the room. Adrian looked at the stain, then at the man holding the empty glass. His hand closed over the coins. Metal clicked against metal. For one suspended second, it seemed he might stand. Instead, he slowly opened his fist. The coins lay still. "You spilled your wine," Adrian said. The guest smiled. "Did I?" "Yes." Clara answered. She stepped between them and held out a clean napkin, not to Adrian, but to the man in velvet. Apologize. A fork struck a plate somewhere behind her. Leonard stared from across the dining room, one hand pressed flat against the service station. The guest's smile tightened. Do you know who I am? I know what you did. Clara's voice carried beneath the music. You humiliated a man because you thought no one here would stop you. He doesn't belong here. That doesn't make him less human. Heat rose from the soup between them, carrying the scent of thyme and black pepper. Adrian watched Clara's fingers. They shook once against the napkin. Then they steadied. The man leaned closer. You should be careful with that uniform. Jobs like yours are easy to lose. Clara placed the napkin beside his empty glass. Then you should apologize before mine costs you your dignity. No one laughed this time. The man's face hardened, but the attention of the entire gala had turned toward him. Cameras rested on several tables. Wealthy guests who had enjoyed the spectacle now avoided his eyes. He muttered, "My apologies," and walked away through a corridor of silence. Clara exhaled only after he disappeared into the crowd. She lifted Adrian's bowl, replaced the stained saucer beneath it, and reached for the coins. Adrian covered them with 2 fingers. Keep the soup. You ordered it. Not at the price you're paying. Clara took the leather check folder from her apron, slipped her gala bonus voucher inside, and signed the receipt. Now the price is mine. Adrian's gaze moved from the voucher to her face. Why? Because hunger is painful enough without an audience. You don't know me. I didn't need to know you to know that was wrong. The chandeliers caught the rainwater still shining in his hair. Something in his expression changed. Not warmth, not yet, but recognition sharpened by surprise. He pushed the untouched coins back toward her. Most people offer kindness when it buys them something. Clara closed his hand around them. Then tonight you met someone with bad business instincts. A shadow fell across the table. Leonard stood there, his jaw rigid, holding Clara's signed receipt between 2 fingers. My office, he said. Now. Clara untied her apron without looking away from Adrian. Let him finish his soup first. Leonard tore the voucher in half. You have one chance to apologize to our VIP. Adrian rose before Clara could answer, and the room seemed to grow quieter around him. Choose your next words carefully, Leonard. The torn voucher drifted onto the white tablecloth, one half landing beside the cooling bowl of soup. Somewhere near the kitchen, silverware struck the floor with a brittle crash. Leonard stared at Adrian beneath the hard chandelier light. This is a private employment matter. Adrian smoothed one rain-darkened sleeve of his wool coat, then stopped performing it for the room. A few guests lowered their champagne glasses. The man in the velvet tuxedo remained near the table, red wine staining the cuff of his shirt like a signature. Leonard turned to Clara. Apologize to Mr. Vale for embarrassing him, and I may let you finish tonight's shift. Clara looked at the torn voucher, then at the guest who had poured wine over a hungry man for entertainment. What exactly should I apologize for? For forgetting your place. The words carried through the warm, perfume-heavy air. Clara's fingers tightened around her apron. Her rent notice waited beneath a magnet on her refrigerator. Her electric bill was 3 days overdue. None of that changed what she had watched happen. My place is serving food, she said, not helping rich men strip someone of his dignity. A murmur moved beneath the chandeliers. Mr. Vale's mouth hardened. Leonard stepped closer, his polished shoes stopping inches from hers. Apologize. Now. Clara folded her apron once, carefully, and placed it across the back of a chair. No, Leonard's face went still. Then you're fired. The dining room absorbed the sentence. No laughter followed this time. Clara removed her brass name tag and laid it on top of the apron. The metal clicked softly against the chair. Put my final paycheck in writing. Leonard snatched up the apron. You'll leave with nothing after the spectacle you caused. Adrian moved around the table, but Clara raised one hand without looking at him. She had defended him by choice. She would accept this cost the same way. On her feet, Mr. Vale gave a thin smile and adjusted his velvet lapel. Some people need consequences before they learn respect. Adrian turned toward him. The old coat still hung heavily from his shoulders, but his posture had changed. The room seemed to contract around the quiet precision of his voice. Respect, Vincent Salvi, is not a lesson you should volunteer to teach. The smile vanished. A champagne flute stopped halfway to someone's lips. Leonard blinked. His name is Richard Vale. That is the name printed on his invitation, Adrian said. Vincent Salvi is the name he buried after the Cicero accounts disappeared. Mr. Salvi stepped back so sharply that his heel struck a chair. With scraped marble. Who are you? Adrian did not answer. He only held the man's gaze until Salvi looked away first. Clara studied the stranger beside her. The wet shoes, the empty pockets, the absolute silence he had drawn from people who had mocked him minutes earlier. Leonard's hand closed around her name tag. Both of you, out. Adrian glanced at Clara, his voice low enough for her alone. Leave if you want, but remember exactly where he puts that apron. Leonard's fingers froze, and for the first time that night, Clara noticed the locked office door behind him, and the fear in his eyes. Cold rain struck the brass awning as the restaurant doors closed behind us. The city smelled of wet pavement and exhaust, and gala music leaked through the glass in muffled strings. Clara had made it 3 steps down the sidewalk when the maitre d' called after her. Wait! He stood beneath the amber entrance light, holding a printed receipt between 2 fingers as if it were contaminated. Leonard watched from behind him. The gratuity envelope from table 12 is missing, the maitre d' said. Mr. Leonard found your apron beside the office. The money isn't there. Clara stopped. Being fired had taken her paycheck. This accusation could take every restaurant job that came after it. Adrian remained near the curb, rain darkening the shoulders of his ruined coat. He did not intervene. Clara turned around on her own. Call the police, she said. Leonard appeared in the doorway. Warm light sharpened his smile. There's no need for that if you return the cash quietly. I didn't take it. Then leave before I change my mind. Clara walked back inside. Her wet soles clicked across the marble, and conversations thinned as guests recognized the waitress who had just been dismissed. She stopped beneath a security camera mounted above the bar. A small green light blinked beside its lens. That camera covers table 12, the service corridor, and your office door, she said. Preserve the footage from the last hour. Leonard's smile vanished. You no longer work here. That doesn't give you permission to destroy evidence after accusing me of theft. She took out her phone and photographed the camera, its serial label, and the brass clock above the bar. 10:47 p.m. Then she sent the images to herself and began recording. State the amount you claim was stolen. Ice rattled inside a nearby glass. Leonard glanced toward the locked office. $500. And you found my apron where? His jaw tightened. Beside my office. Clara shifted the phone toward him. Then seal the office, preserve my apron, and save every camera angle from 10 o'clock forward. If anything disappears, there's now a timestamp showing who controlled it. Adrian stood just inside the entrance, silent. Yet when Clara looked at him, his chin lowered once. Not rescue, recognition. Leonard reached for her phone, but the maitre d' stepped between them, suddenly aware that half the room was watching. Across the gala, Vincent Salvi slipped away from his table and murmured into his cell. The soft music concealed most of his words. Not all of them. The waitress forced them to keep the footage, he said. Handle her before she leaves. Clara heard it. So did Adrian. Leonard locked the front doors with a hard metallic turn. The green camera light continued blinking above them. Then Vincent looked directly at Clara and ended the call. You should have accepted being fired, he said. Now you've made yourself part of the evidence. The deadbolt's metallic click lingered beneath the orchestra music, while chandelier light trembled across spilled wine and polished silver. Vincent Salvi took one measured step toward Clara. Give Leonard your phone. Clara's fingers tightened around it. Before she could answer, Adrian glanced toward the table where he had been sitting. His old coat lay across the chair, but one sleeve hung inside out. Rainwater still darkened the wool. The inner seam had been split. He crossed the room without hurry and ran 2 fingers along the torn lining. Whatever he expected to find was gone. Vincent noticed. A thin smile touched his mouth. Lose something? Adrian lifted his gaze. The room seemed to contract around the silence. Something that was never yours. Leonard hurried between the tables, ordering the staff to clear every place setting. Porcelain struck porcelain. Silverware rattled into plastic tubs. Under the noise, Clara saw Adrian inspect the coat's brass buttons. One space near the cuff was empty. Then she remembered where he had been seated when the velvet-clad man spilled the wine. She moved before anyone could question her, slipping between 2 banquet tables as though she were still working her section. The carpet smelled of red wine and damp wool. Near Adrian's chair, something dull gleamed beneath the white tablecloth. Clara crouched. A brass button rested against the table leg, too heavy and too warm to feel ordinary. Its rim had twisted open during the commotion, revealing a black sliver no larger than her fingernail. A memory card. What did you find? Leonard's voice cut through the music. Clara closed her fist. The tiny metal edge pressed into her palm. Turning it over meant surrendering the only thing Leonard had tried to erase. Keeping it meant trusting a stranger who had known Vincent's real name, and accepting that the locked doors might now be meant for her. A broken clasp from my apron, she said. Leonard held out his hand. Then give it to me. Clara rose and walked past him. Not toward the maitre d', not toward the cameras, toward Adrian. Vincent shifted to block her, but the maitre d' rolled a service cart into the aisle, forcing him to step aside as china chimed beneath its linen cover. Clara reached Adrian and opened her hand between them. The brass shell caught the chandelier light. His expression changed by less than an inch. A stillness around the mouth, a sharper focus in his eyes. This fell beneath your table, she said. I think someone searched your coat for it. Adrian did not take it immediately. You could hand it to Leonard and walk away. No, her voice stayed quiet. He already tried to make the truth disappear once. Only then did Adrian close his fingers over the button, shielding the card from the room. The poor stranger vanished. Not through a door, but in the way he straightened. In the way Vincent stopped smiling. Adrian leaned close enough that Clara alone could hear him. This proves someone I trusted sold tonight to Salvi. Behind them, the orchestra fell silent. Vincent raised one hand, and 2 men near the locked entrance moved into the aisle. Adrian slipped the button into his torn coat and turned Clara gently behind his shoulder. You chose whom to trust, he said, watching Vincent approach. Now he has to decide what that choice will cost him. $30,000. Vincent's voice crossed the silent dining room as a cream-colored check slid over the linen. Candlelight trembled across the wet ink. The air smelled of red wine, cooling soup, and the bitter smoke clinging to his velvet tuxedo. Clara looked past the check to Leonard, who stood beside the locked entrance with one hand extended. Give me the button, he said. Adrian's torn coat was only inches from her shoulder, but one of Vincent's men stepped between them. Another blocked the service aisle. No hands were raised. None needed to be. Vincent tapped the check with one polished fingernail. Your landlord filed the final notice this morning. $30,000 clears the debt and keeps your apartment. The refrigerator motors hummed behind the bar. Clara's fingers tightened around her phone until its metal edge pressed into her palm. That apartment held 12 years of her life. Her mother's chipped blue cup. The window where winter air whistled through the frame. The address she had written on every job application when nothing else remained steady. How do you know about my debt? She asked. Vincent smiled without warmth. Because desperate people are predictable. He uncapped a silver pen and placed it across the check. Take it. Walk out. Forget the stranger. Adrian did not move to answer for her. Beneath the chandelier, his old shoes remained dark with rain, and the wine stain on his coat looked almost black. Only his eyes shifted toward Clara, waiting, letting the decision belong to her. Leonard came closer. You already lost your job. Don't lose your home for a man whose name you don't even know. Clara lifted the check. For 1 second, the paper whispered between her fingers. Then she folded it once, twice. Vincent's smile widened, until she pressed it into his untouched glass of wine. Red spread through the paper, swallowing his signature. My home isn't yours to purchase, she said. Neither is my silence. Leonard reached for Adrian's coat. Clara stepped sideways and blocked him, but Vincent's men closed the space around her. The maitre d' suddenly shoved a service cart into the aisle. Crystal glasses rattled, silverware struck marble, and the sharp noise made every guest turn. It bought Clara 1 step. Not enough. Vincent caught her phone from her hand and held it above the wine-soaked table. Last chance. Adrian moved. No rush. No wasted motion. He took Vincent's wrist and lowered the phone gently to the linen, as if correcting a breach of etiquette. You offered her money, he said. His voice was quiet, yet the room seemed to contract around it. Then you threatened her home. Now you touch what belongs to her. A ring flashed beneath the frayed cuff of his coat. Black onyx stamped with a silver crest. Vincent's face emptied. Adrian released him and pulled a second phone from inside the coat. One too new and too secure to belong to a penniless stranger. He pressed a single key. Open the doors, he said. Leonard gave a brittle laugh. To whom? Engines answered from outside. 1. Then 3 more. Their low rumble traveled through the floor, vibrating the stems of the wineglasses. White headlights swept across the windows, cutting through the gold dining room in hard, moving bars. Vincent stared at the ring, then at Adrian. You weren't supposed to reveal yourself. Adrian stepped in front of Clara, his torn coat unable to disguise the authority in his shoulders. She was willing to lose her home before selling me out, he said. I won't let her pay that price alone. Heavy footsteps approached beyond the locked doors. Leonard's extended hand dropped to his side. Adrian faced the entrance as silhouettes gathered behind the frosted glass. Unlock it, he ordered. This time, no one mistook him for poor. Steel bolts snapped back inside the doors, each metallic crack cutting through the silence. Cold air rolled into the dining room carrying rain, exhaust, and the low growl of 4 black SUVs idling beneath the awning. Clara watched Adrian remain perfectly still as 6 security men entered in dark overcoats, water shining on their shoulders beneath the chandeliers. The first man stopped 3 feet away and lowered his head. Mr. Moretti. The name moved through the room faster than a shout. Chairs scraped marble. Conversations died. The restaurant owner hurried from the private mezzanine, his face draining pale when he saw Adrian's onyx crest ring. Mr. Moretti, I had no idea. That is why I came dressed this way, Adrian said. His voice stayed quiet. It made everyone listen harder. One by one, gala guests lowered their eyes. Even the man in the velvet tuxedo who had spilled wine on Adrian stepped backward, his reluctant apology suddenly looking less like manners and more like survival. Clara did not move. The wet brass button rested in her palm, its ridged edge pressing a red crescent into her skin. She had heard the Moretti name whispered by customers who controlled banks, unions, and half the contracts in Chicago. They never said it loudly. Now that name belonged to the stranger whose soup she had bought with her last cash tips. Adrian turned toward Vincent. You knew my face. Leonard knew my coat. Yet both of you let this room mock me because you needed me distracted. Vincent's hand tightened around Clara's confiscated phone. You have nothing. Clara stepped out from behind Adrian before anyone could stop her. She placed the brass button on a white tablecloth, removed the tiny memory card, and slid it toward the security chief. Her hand shook once, then steadied. Check it. Adrian gave a single nod. The card disappeared into a secure device. Blue light washed over the chief's knuckles while rain drummed against the windows. A file opened. Guest lists, payment records, security schedules. A diagram marking Adrian's arrival route in red. At the bottom sat a list of names connected to Vincent Salvi, including one from inside Adrian's own organization. Verified, the chief said. The gala was a trap, Mr. Moretti. They planned to isolate you, seize the card, and blame the breach on your security team. The restaurant owner gripped the balcony rail. Leonard leaned against the locked office door as though the wood might hold him upright. Vincent's expression hardened, but Adrian did not look at him. He looked at Clara. The room had bowed to his name. She was the only person still meeting his eyes. You risked your job, your home, and your future for a man you believed had nothing, he said. Clara held out her hand toward Vincent. My phone. Vincent hesitated. Adrian said nothing. He did not need to. Vincent placed it in her palm. Clara checked the screen, then faced Adrian again. I defended a stranger, she said. Not a throne. Something shifted in Adrian's gaze. Not anger. Recognition. Around them, powerful people waited for his judgment. But he crossed the marble toward the one woman who refused to bend. Then don't bow, he said. But before this night ends, you must decide whether you can stand beside the man beneath the name. Clara closed her fingers around her phone. First, Mr. Moretti, you decide whether standing beside you means I still belong to myself. Rainwater slid down the tall windows, turning the black SUVs outside into wavering shadows beneath the streetlights. Inside, the air smelled of spilled wine, wet wool, and cooling soup. Adrian held Clara's gaze. Then he removed the onyx ring from his finger. A soft click sounded as he placed it on the marble table between them. No title, he said. No claim. You choose. The restaurant owner hurried down from the mezzanine, clutching a leather folder. Mr. Moretti, we can restore her position immediately. Full back pay. A promotion. Clara did not touch the folder. Leonard lingered beside his locked office. One hand pressed against the door as though the wood might hold him upright. Adrian turned toward the owner. You fired her for refusing to participate in humiliation. You accused her of theft when she demanded evidence. A promotion would not erase either. His security chief approached with the verified memory card sealed inside a clear evidence sleeve. The files are secured, Mr. Moretti. We can take control of the restaurant and its records tonight. Adrian glanced at Clara. Can, he repeated. Not will. He ordered his men to preserve the footage and deliver every record to the proper authorities without altering a frame. Then he faced the restaurant owner. I will not buy this place. I will not buy her job. And I will not decide what justice looks like for her. The owner's pen trembled against the folder. Across the room, the man in the velvet tuxedo lowered his eyes. Clara stepped forward and took the folder, not to accept it, but to tear the unsigned employment offer cleanly in half. The paper made a dry, sharp sound. My name is cleared in writing, she said. My final paycheck is issued tonight. Every server keeps the tips Leonard withheld. After that, I walk out as an employee who resigned, not a woman rescued by a powerful man. The owner looked toward Adrian for permission. Adrian slid the onyx ring farther away from his hand. Why are you looking at me? She gave you her terms. For the first time that night, the room moved at Clara's command. Payroll records were brought from the office. The maitre d' unlocked the tip ledger. Leonard surrendered his keys. Clara photographed every signed page with the phone Vincent had returned, then sent copies to herself before placing the device in her pocket. Nothing depended on Adrian's word. Nothing could disappear with his silence. When the owner signed her clearance, Clara folded it once and tucked it inside her apron. Adrian's secure phone vibrated against the marble. He ignored it. My name can open every door in Chicago, he said quietly. Tonight, I am closing one. I will not use my power to place you beside me. Cold air entered as security opened the front doors. Clara untied her apron and laid it beside his ring. Good. She stepped into the rain without asking for his coat, his car, or his protection. Behind her, Adrian looked at the Empire waiting for his next command. Then he left the ring on the table and followed alone. At the curb, Clara turned beneath the silver rain. If you want to walk beside me, Adrian, come without an entourage. For SUV engines went silent. Cold rain struck the awning like handfuls of thrown rice, sharp against the sudden hush of 4 black SUVs. Adrian stood at the curb in his worn coat, 3 feet from Clara, while his security detail waited behind dark glass. No doors opened. No one followed. "Walk," Clara said. Water gleamed on her lashes as she turned toward the elevated train. Adrian obeyed. Their footsteps crossed wet pavement beneath amber streetlights. Without the onyx ring, the tailored guards, or the authority that had silenced a ballroom, he looked almost like the stranger who had counted coins at her table. Almost. Clara stopped beneath the iron tracks when his secure phone vibrated again. The sound was small, but it carried through the cold. "Answer it." Adrian lifted the phone. The Moretti security chief confirmed that the memory card files had been copied, secured, and prepared as evidence. Vincent Salvi had returned Clara's phone. Leonard had surrendered his office keys. The maitre d' had unlocked the tip ledger, and the restaurant owner's signed records would release every withheld gratuity. "No retaliation," Adrian said. "No favors. Let the evidence speak." He ended the call before anyone could answer for him. A train thundered overhead, shaking rain from the steel beams. Clara studied his empty right hand. "Your people are waiting for you. They always wait." "And tomorrow?" Adrian glanced back. The SUVs remained motionless, black shapes beneath the restaurant's gold windows. Inside, powerful people had lowered their heads because they feared his name. Clara had stood upright because she did not need it. "Tomorrow, Vincent faces what he built," he said. "Leonard faces what he signed. The owner pays the staff what he withheld. And you decide what happens to your life." Clara drew the damp clearance letter from her pocket. Its ink had not run. "My landlord gave me until Friday." Adrian's jaw tightened, but he did not reach for his phone. He did not offer money. "What will you do?" "Use the tips they owe me. Take double shifts somewhere honest. Find a smaller place if I have to. I know restaurants that would hire you tonight." "Because I'm qualified?" "Because you made a room full of cowards remember what dignity looks like." A cab swept through a puddle, spraying the curb with icy water. Adrian stepped aside instead of pulling her behind him. The choice was slight. Clara noticed. From her pocket, she took the few damp bills Adrian had placed on the table for the soup. She pressed them into his palm. "You paid too much. I had $3. You left all 3. It was the first honest meal anyone offered me that night." Clara closed his fingers over the money. "Then buy me coffee." Steam clouded the windows of a 24-hour diner across the street. No velvet ropes, no bowed heads, no locked doors. Adrian looked once toward the Empire waiting at the curb, then raised his secure phone and spoke a final command. "Go home." One by one, the headlights went dark. The SUVs pulled away without him, tires whispering over rain-black asphalt. Clara crossed the street first. Adrian followed, not as a ruler claiming a reward, but as a man accepting her terms. At the diner door, he reached for the handle, then paused. "May I?" Clara held his gaze before nodding. Warm air rolled over them, carrying coffee, butter, and toasted bread. They entered side by side. That night, the only woman who refused to bow did not take his throne. She taught him how to stand without it.